This week, in a closed-door briefing that later leaked to several outlets, an American official described the regional situation as stable and contained. Hold on to that word, contained, because less than a day later, a chain of seemingly unrelated incidents across 3 different countries activated almost simultaneously in a pattern that intelligence analysts struggled to explain as coincidence. Contained does not look like 3 flashpoints lighting up within hours of each other. These two things cannot both be true. Today I want to show you which one is the lie. CNN is asking whether this is escalation. Fox is asking who's to blame. The BBC is asking whether diplomacy can still work. Wrong questions, all of them, because they assume someone gave an order. The right question is this: what if there was no single order? What if Iran built a system that didn't need one? In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through what I call the Tripwire doctrine, show you the historical thinking behind it, and explain why Washington keeps looking for a trigger that, by design, doesn't exist. I call this the Tripwire doctrine. Here's the simple version. A tripwire, in classic military engineering, isn't a weapon. It's a sensor wired to a response that happens automatically, without anyone needing to be present to pull it. You don't have to guard every inch of a perimeter if you build enough wires that any intrusion sets something off on its own. Iran's regional posture, built up over decades, functions the same way. A network of aligned actors, each with enough autonomy to respond to specific triggers without waiting for instructions from Tehran. The historical anchor here is game theory, specifically the doctrine of automaticity that nuclear strategists like Thomas Schelling wrote about during the Cold War. Schelling's insight was that a threat is far more credible if you remove your own ability to back down from it. If the response is automatic rather than discretionary, the other side can't gamble on your hesitation. Iran appears to have built something similar at a conventional level. A system where restraint isn't a phone call away. There are 5 pieces of evidence for this. Number 1, the speed of response. In incident after incident across the region in recent years, responses from aligned actors have come within hours, not days, far faster than any centralized command and control chain could plausibly authorize through normal channels. Fast responses suggest standing authority, not real-time instruction. Number 2, deniability by design. Tehran's public statements after these incidents are almost always vague, supportive of resistance, in solidarity with, language engineered to avoid direct claim of command, because direct claim of command would make Iran legally and diplomatically responsible in a way it has structured itself to avoid. It's the lawyer's trick of never signing the order, just nodding at the outcome. Number 3, redundancy. There isn't one tripwire, there are several, spread across different fronts, so that disabling or deterring one doesn't disable the system. Think of it like a fire alarm wired through every floor of a building instead of one box at the entrance. Cut one wire, the rest still ring. Number 4, the asymmetric patience clock. Each aligned actor has its own local grievances and its own local audience, meaning their motivation to act doesn't depend on Tehran's calendar at all. They will pull their own trigger when their own situation calls for it. That makes the system far harder to predict and far harder to deter, with threats aimed only at the center. Number 5, the cost-shifting effect. Every time a tripwire fires, the United States and its allies must decide whether to respond directly against Iran, which risks a wider war neither side wants, or respond locally, which absorbs the cost without resolving the underlying network. Most of the time, they choose the local, contained response. That choice, repeated enough times, becomes the new normal. And a new normal that costs the defender every single time is, by definition, winning for the side with no comparable cost. Now, the strongest case against me. A serious critic will say I'm overcomplicating disorder, that the region is simply unstable on its own terms, full of actors with their own histories of grievance that long predate any Iranian strategy, and that attributing all of it to a deliberate tripwire doctrine gives Tehran more credit for design than it deserves. Sometimes chaos is just chaos. That's a fair point, and I want to be honest that not every flashpoint in this region traces back to a single architect. But here is what that argument cannot explain: the consistency of timing. Genuinely unrelated, independently motivated actors should not cluster their actions around the same diplomatic moments, sanctions announcements, troop movements, negotiation deadlines. As often as the pattern actually shows. Randomness doesn't usually rhyme that closely with the news cycle. So let's put it together. Iran didn't need to build a single chain of command capable of starting and stopping a regional conflict on cue. It built a distributed system of actors who share incentives, who don't need daily instruction, and who collectively make any single American or Israeli action against Iran's core territory carry the risk of triggering consequences far outside Iran's own borders. That is deterrence without a single finger on a single trigger, the most cost-efficient deterrent in the modern world because it requires no standing army to maintain, only relationships. And here's the twist nobody's talking about. The biggest beneficiary of this tripwire network isn't even Iran, it's Russia. Every flashpoint that pulls American attention and resources toward the Middle East is one less resource, one less diplomatic moment, one less headline cycle focused on Ukraine or on Eastern Europe. Moscow doesn't have to lift a finger. It just watches the tripwires do the work of fragmenting Western attention for free. Watch these three things over the next 48 to 72 hours. 1. Any sudden statement from Washington explicitly naming a non-Iranian actor as responsible for an incident. That's the tell that the deniability layer is working exactly as designed. 2. Any movement of additional U.S. naval or air assets into the region, which signals resource diversion away from other theaters. 3. Any quiet diplomatic outreach from Gulf states seeking direct guarantees from Tehran, a sign they understand the network better than Washington does and are negotiating around it rather than through Washington. Your homework, pull up a timeline of regional flashpoints over the last 18 months and lay it next to a timeline of major U.S. policy announcements on Iran. See if the rhythm matches what I've described. If you think I'm reading a pattern into noise, tell me exactly where the pattern breaks down. I want that pushback in the comments. I'll leave you with this question. If a deterrent works precisely because no one can prove who's holding the trigger, can you ever actually defeat it, or can you only ever manage it? I'll see you in the next one.